Now, real people, real opinions. Nighttime talk with Niall Boylan.
Ireland's classic hits radio.
All right, welcome back. I'm interested in that story, by the way, in the news. They mentioned there that 60% of girls believe there isn't equality when it comes to STEM subject. And I'm okay, can we equate that to 60%? In other words, there's 60% less chance of them actually getting, into the chosen career they want. I don't believe that's true. I do believe the opportunity is there. And I think if we keep telling girls that they don't have equality or keep telling them it's going to be harder for them, I think they start to believe it. And maybe we'll get around to talking about it during the week because of gender equality. And I know political parties who are having problems getting 30% female. Now, they don't get funding from the state if they don't get the 30% female candidates. But why would you force that? I mean, if you cannot get 30% female candidates, and you're literally going out saying, listen, you wouldn't just run for the party on paper. We'll throw a few posters up. You're not going to get elected, but hey, we'll have your name down. At least we'll get our funding then. It just seems like a complete waste of time. And would you really want to be elected or be running for a political party just because you're a woman? I don't know if quotas, I understand the principle behind it, but it is discriminatory, isn't it? I mean, you don't get 30%, you don't get money for running men. And I understand for years, obviously, politics was ruled by men. And we want more women in there. Of course we do. But in saying that, we only want women who want to be in there. We don't want them running just for the sake of it. Anyway, look, I'll get around to talking about that during the week because it's an interesting point, this whole idea of quotas and equality and whether there is equality. And I think we can only ever offer equality of opportunity. We can never offer equality of outcome. We can't offer that because that's just up to you, isn't it? We'll get on to talk about that later on, but let's get to these offensive and disturbing jokes, seemingly. Seemingly it's disturbing anyway. Anyway, it was reported today that Mrs. Brown's Boys star Brendan O'Carroll has had to apologise over what was called a clumsy joke where a racial term was implied. Now, you're all going to say to me, Niall, what was the joke? And believe me, I have searched. I have searched the internet, scoured the internet. If so many people were upset by this, by the way, surely somebody knows what it was. But nobody seems to be reporting on it. If it was that serious, you'd imagine somebody would report on it. Anyway, the BBC said they had to pause the rehearsals of the upcoming Christmas special to investigate the incident. That's how serious they're taking this. Now, while this situation is current, and I'm sure it warrants an apology, I don't know what he actually said, it has made me think about something that has been going on for quite a while now, where we're actually cancelling historic instances of what could be construed as racist, misogynistic, sexist, or generally offensive content. Now, offensive to who, of course? There are a cohort of people in this world, and I think it's a small cohort of people, who get offended very easily. Like, for example, I don't believe the majority of women are offended by sexist jokes. I don't believe the majority of black people are offended by what could be construed as a racist joke, because there can be racism on both sides. I don't believe the majority, for example, of people with disabilities would be offended by a comedian on stage mocking a disability. I don't believe they can see the lighter side of it. So I don't believe that the majority of people are offended. For example, I mentioned at the start of the show, I was talking to AJ, I think, about it, or I can't remember what I was talking about in the air about AJ, but I was watching Fawlty Towers, Back to the Future. And the bit where the Doc is being shot by the Libyan terrorists, he shouts at Marty, "It's the Libyan terrorists." They've actually edited the word Libyan out of it. And even on the letter that Marty writes to him, on such and such a date, you'll be shot by Libyan terrorists. They've CGI'd the word Libyan out and just put in terrorists. So, because the indication is this is a stereotype that Libyans must be terrorists. But that never dawned on me. Like, at no point did I watch Back to the Future and go, oh, all Libyans must be terrorists. I never said that at all. No, I don't think anybody thinks that. It just so happens the Libyans must be terrorists. That particular instance were terrorists. It's like saying the Irish drunk. Do you take the word Irish out just in case there's a stereotype of Irish people all being drunk or something like that? But this idea now that Little Britain, these are some of the programmes that now want to cancel, or they're going to cancel. Little Britain, because they've done blackface, and they also do The Only Gay in the Village. Blackadder. I know I'm never a fan of Blackadder, so I have no idea what the racist connotations or the sexist connotations might be in that. Fawlty Towers. Now, of course, the Major in Fawlty Towers, as well as Basil, was a head case. But that's the whole point, isn't it? He's a grumpy old bigoted man who's racist. And he uses racist terms every now and again because he's a grumpy old bigoted man, and that's the way they paint that picture of him. That's a good thing, isn't it? That we're showing that that's wrong. You know, and I know that, for example, the German episode was cancelled in Germany. They never showed it, the one where the Germans come to visit. But it's hilariously funny. And the Major is hilariously funny. His bigotry is funny because it shows and it highlights what bigotry and how daft bigotry actually is and what it is. So I don't understand why we want to cancel all of this. It was hilariously funny. If you look at it through a 2024 lens, yeah, I'm sure there are people out there who get offended. I don't get offended. It doesn't bother me in the slightest. I couldn't care less. I think people just get offended too easy. I think you have to look at comedy for what it is. It's comedy is a collection of words put together to make you smile or make you laugh. It doesn't really matter what it's about. It doesn't matter what the content is because it's not real. It's a joke. It's funny. But people just get offended. And not only that, they're now, censoring movies. They're putting warnings on things like The Fresh Prince of Bel-Air. How can The Fresh Prince of Bel-Air be racist? If that's the case, why not put a warning on, what's that movie, White Dudes or White Chicks? With Damon Wayne and his brother, who are the black guys who paint their faces white. But they never put a warning on that. So kind of the racism only seems to work one way, doesn't it, when they talk about these things? The royal family. How is the royal family offensive? How? I don't get it, because it's exactly what it is. It's people, a family in a room, talking amongst themselves who would say things that are inappropriate. And at one point, Jim Davidson was asked if he'd apologise, the famous comedian, for the jokes that he told as part of his routine. And he said categorically no. He did, one of his main characters was a character called Chalky, who was a black guy. And he did this character of Chalky, which was funny at the time, hilariously funny. And he's been asked to apologise for it. And he went, why would I apologise for it? It was funny at the time. So this idea that we can change history. And a shining example of that is this week, the Berkeley Library. On a more serious note, the Berkeley Library, they changed the name of the library. They gave it some female name, or I don't know what that was all about. Anyway, they changed the name to another historical character, a woman. And the reason being is that George Berkeley was a landowner in New England, and he had, I think, 4 slaves. Now, remembering, of course, that at that time, most historical figures would have been aristocrats. They would have been quite wealthy people. And most of them would have been landowners. And most landowners or plantation owners of the time in the 17th or 18th century would have had slaves. Even American presidents had slaves up until the abolition of slavery. By the way, the abolition of slavery, of course, was one of the best things that could have ever happened. But in saying that, you can't look from 2024 at what was happening in the 17th century, which was pretty normalised in those days, and be kind of somehow aghast by it and say, that's horrendous. We should cancel everything to do with it. No, that's history. You can't change or erase history. We're not time travellers. Accept it for what it was. If we look at all historical characters that you have statues of or rooms named after or roads named after, I'm pretty sure you'd find something to be horrified by today's standards. So this is just wokeness. It's ridiculous. I don't know. Maybe that's just me. Maybe you're one of those people who believe they're doing the right thing, that we need to move on and we need to draw a line in the sand and say, we need to forget about all that stuff. That was all horrible. That was all wrong. Let me know what you think. The number is 087 188 0008. By the way, I'd love to hear if there's anybody who agrees with cancelling all this stuff and editing all this stuff and changing this stuff to make it, nicer. I'd love to hear from you because I really want to understand why it's such a good idea. So I will give your call a priority because I'm pretty sure most of my listeners, or most of you, will think this is stupid. So I want to know who these people are that want this to happen. Let me know what you think. The number is 087 188 0008. Let me go to Valerie. Valerie, hi, how are you?
Hey, Niall, how are things?
Good. Valerie, I don't know what Brendan O'Carroll said, by the way, but it couldn't have been that bad because it would have been a headline in the newspaper if it had been that bad.
Yeah, I hear you.
No, I don't know what he said.
Same. So why is it such a big deal?
Well, they've cancelled the rehearsals. There's a full investigation. Brendan's been forced to apologise for what he says was a clumsy joke. I don't know. And
you still can't find the content?
No.
I haven't even looked.
No.
Yeah, I hear you.
No, I'm at the scouring Reddit. I've scoured the internet. I've scoured everywhere. And no one seems to know what it actually is. Now, it was a rehearsal, so there wouldn't have been many people there. But according
to the BBC, is it?
Yeah, according to the BBC, the crew who were there were shocked. And I actually don't believe that. I believe maybe one person was shocked and went to management and gave out about it. And maybe the rest of them probably giggled or chuckled away. I don't know. I find it difficult to believe that it could have been that bad.
Yeah, and back to what you were saying earlier, and particularly I think trying to change history. You know, history is his word, his story, and we can't change.
No.
Like, you know, particularly, well, I suppose more so as regards books, you know, like in school, like it's saying
Roald Dahl now. They want to ban a lot of his books.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
And J.K. Rowling's as
That's
well.
right. Oh, they're talking about, because J.K. Rowling has opinions on transgender people, they want to, ban Harry Potter books, or, I don't know, there's a kind of boycott of them or something. I'm ridiculous.
So who is they now? That's my
I don't know who they are.
Who is the power?
I don't know. I mean, Fawlty Towers was one of the funniest comedies in history. It was voted the best comedy in 50 years or something there recently. And yet they want to cancel it. They want to edit it. They want to change it. I don't get it.
Who is they?
They. I want to hear from they. If they is listening, could they ring in?
Exactly. Please tell us why it's so offensive. Please tell us why we need to change it.
Well, they say there's racism in it, sexism, you know.
But that's life. You know, it doesn't matter what century, it doesn't matter what decade. People have lived through racism. They've lived through whatever other ism, like ageism, feminism, like every ism. And it's a fact of life. Shit happens.
Yeah.
You know, and it is offensive for somebody to be rude or blah-de-blah. But, you know, and it's okay to laugh at old people. It's okay to laugh at disabled people. It's okay to laugh at women. It's okay to laugh at men. It's okay to laugh at children. It's okay to laugh. You know, who's telling us we can't laugh anymore?
Well, we can laugh seemingly, but now we're told we're limited in what we can laugh at.
Yeah.
But here's the thing. Secretly, right, the people who were responsible, for editing all these, the people within the BBC, or the BBC seem to be the paragon of perfectness these days.
On this occasion,
yeah. Well, but the people within the BBC, when they're texting them back and forward to their mates personally and privately, I'm pretty sure they're laughing at stuff that some people might deem inappropriate. I don't understand it.
I don't understand. Same. We're on the same page here. My blood is boiling, but you and I agree. So I don't know how we're going to sort this out. It's so annoying, like.
So the BBC have now placed warnings on sitcoms like The Fresh Prince of Bel-Air. How is The Fresh Prince of Bel-Air in any way offensive?
And who is legislating the warnings? Who is implementing the warnings?
It's kind of self-regulated, isn't it? Self-regulated.
Well, like, again, who's in charge? Why are you so cross with us for laughing?
I mean, I mentioned Back to the Future, one of my favourite movies of all time. And I watched it on RTE over the Christmas period. And they played the new version. Well, that's probably not their fault, because that's the version that's been made available by Universal Studios. But the new version where they've edited the word Libyans out of it. I mean, when the doc sees them coming to get him, he goes, "It's the Libyans." And I go, why? It's not like we believe that every Libyan is a terrorist. We don't believe that. You know what I mean?
Of course not. It's like the fairy tale of New York.
Oh, yeah, the word faggot. Yeah.
How dare anybody go near that song, those words? How dare anybody go near beautiful writing like Killing a Mockingbird or Of Mice
to Men. Yeah, that was yeah.
How dare anybody go near that? And again, like you said, Niall, I hope somebody calls up and explains it.
Well, I'd love to hear from somebody, but I'm worried now tonight that we're not going to hear from anybody that actually thinks this is a good idea. Because so who is it that thinks this is a good idea?
Exactly, that's my question. I don't understand.
Stay there
I don't think it's fair.
Stay there for a second. Des, hi, how are you, Des?
Niall, good evening, how's it going?
I'm going to struggle tonight to find anybody who will defend, the broadcasting companies or the people who make these things for wanting to cancel, edit, or put warnings on stuff. It just doesn't make sense.
Yeah, it's called comedy, isn't it?
Well,
satire. Could you imagine if Alan Carr came onto a Brendan O'Carroll show, the language that would be used?
Yeah.
I remember going to see Brendan O'Carroll when he was starting out in the basketball arena in Tala, and I got up to go to the toilet, and it was probably the worst thing I ever did because I got absolutely slated.
No.
But like, you know, if you're going to take offence to these things, don't go to these shows. You know, but like, I remember I grew up watching the Monty Python Flying Circus.
Yeah.
And there was a part in the life of Brian where your man turned around and says, from now on, I want to be called Loretta. So that's as far back as the...
I remember that, yeah. And they said, he said, I want to have babies. And he said, but you can't have babies. Yeah. And he said, well, I want the right to have babies.
Yeah, so, like, you know, it's comedy, like, you know, how do you define comedy, like, you know, you're right, like, I love Fawlty Towers. I have the box set of Fawlty Towers. And I feel like going out and getting all these box sets now of videos before they start changing the words and the scenes, you know, because I think BBC are under pressure for all their allegations over the last couple of years that they have to be seen to take.
But it's not just BBC. It's all the big Hollywood companies. It's Universal. It's all the big Hollywood names. Yeah, the whole lot of them.
Yeah, but I think because of BBC with Brendan O'Carroll, I think they have to be seen to look
act
like they're. To act exactly because of the way it's gone for the last few years with them, and you wouldn't know what Brendan O'Carroll said.
I mean, you remember the stuff Jeremy Clarkson used to say on Top Gear, for God's sake. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And he got fired.
He did, yeah.
You know.
Yeah, on one occasion he did, actually. That's right.
If you look at it, the best comedy came out of the 70s, 80s and 90s, and God only knows what they're going to look at now as comedy going forward, because it's going to get very boring.
Exactly.
But isn't that the purpose of comedy? Comedy picks on the weaknesses in society and makes fun of it and makes us laugh. You know what I mean?
And you buy tickets to go to a show to laugh.
Absolutely, and we're entitled to laugh.
Mm.
And if someone picks on you in the show, you're not going to take offence to it because
it's good enough for us.
Yeah, if you're going to take offence of all these silly things now, you'll be going to nothing, you know, because it's comedy. Comedy is comedy, like, you know, it's funny.
And we'd be sad and lonely and not allowed to laugh or recognise that there are differences in society. You know, like Niall was saying, and you, Des, as well. You know, if you're old, laugh at me, I'm old. You know, and we're all, like, it's life. You know, life is funny, and it should be.
And I think they're going a bit far now when you talk about they're editing books and songs and all that. It's just...
That's not fair.
I don't know who they're trying to please and who they're trying to look after, but it's not right. And all that stuff is history, and it's the best of comedy you'll ever get. And
what about the other stuff? Leaving comedy aside... there was a story during the week about, the Berkeley Library in Trinity College has been renamed because George Berkeley, of course, was a historical character back, I think, the 17th century who had a plantation in New England and hired 4 slaves. Now, that as we know, by today's standards is outrageous, but by their standards back in the 17th century, it was quite normal for that to happen before the abolition of slavery. And most people who were wealthy or historical figures would have had a plantation, like American presidents at the time as well, would have had plantations with slaves, and it would have been quite common. So is it wrong then to erase those things from history and say, we can't have that nowadays, can't talk about that nowadays?
I think that's dead wrong. Yeah,
it is wrong because it's history. Whatever they do now in the future, going forward, fair enough, but leave history alone. History is
that
history,
did happen, Des and Niall. It did happen.
You know?
Yeah. Well, it's like we're kind of in denial that it happened, and we want to erase it just in case future generations see what we did. It's like we want to brush it under the carpet.
Yeah.
Yeah, you can't erase what's happened. You can only go forward and make sure them type of things don't happen again. But you can't erase history like it's happened. You know?
And we learn from that, Des, don't we? That did happen, and we have to learn and from facts.
I mean, I don't know, Des, did you watch Blackadder, by the way?
No, I didn't.
No, I wasn't a Blackadder fan. It never appealed to me. What about Little Britain?
No, I didn't watch that either. I watched Monty Python. I watched Fawlty Towers.
Well, see, the problem with Fawlty Towers is not only John Cleese, according to the people who get offended, it's the Major. And they're editing all the Major's bits now because he made quite a few racist comments throughout the 13 episodes. But the whole idea of that was the Major was this loony old man who was bigoted and racist and all of those things. But that was the purpose of it, wasn't it? To show him up for what he was.
But that's the way they were, Noel. That's the way they were when they were growing up. That was the era they were in, and they seen things happening and they didn't like it, and they just decided. Well, my father was. I mean, I know it was terrible, but he was a racist, and he died when he was 91. But he had terrible comments and terrible views. But that's just the era they were in. They just seen what was coming up in the 90s and the 2000s, and they didn't like it. But they didn't. Yeah. They weren't going to change their views, or that was them. That's the way they were. And Monty Python's the Fawlty Towers showed it as it was, and whether you like it or not, it's just comedy.
But I'm wondering, like, what's next? Only Fools and Horses. I'm pretty sure if you start examining that, you'll find stuff in it that wasn't appropriate.
Right, that'll have to go.
I love Only Fools and Horses. I watch it on Gold on a regular basis. All the older ones come up on repeat every now and again, and it's hilarious.
Very funny.
What about the Late Late Show?
Oh, the Late Late Show.
Do
do you remember that very funny moment of the Late Late Show where Pat Kenny, who was awkward, but he was interviewing this little kid and he was in the audience. Another way he'd go to somebody in the front of the audience, and there was a kid about 12, and he went over to him and he says, "I believe you're heading away to do some breakdancing in New York." And the kid said, "That's right, I'm entering a competition, Pat." I said, I'm in the final. And he said, "Wonderful, wonderful." And he says, "Yes, it's very popular in America, isn't it, with the black people? I suppose you'll be painting your face black, will you?" And it's up on YouTube, you can watch it. But there's no way that Pat Kenny is racist. It was just an awkward moment where he said something that he thought was funny at the time.
And we're all under scrutiny.
But that's what it is. What's wrong with us? Why can't we smile and laugh? Let me go to Dave. Dave, Dave, can you hold on? And I'll come to you straight after the break. I'll be only a minute, okay? Well, don't harm me, Dave.
Fine, so.
And you're like, you know what? You're like a bad girlfriend, Dave. Stay there for a second, Dave. Be with you in a second. If there's anybody, by the way, I want to find the they, because it keeps referring to they believe, they want to do this, they want to cancel that, they don't like the name of this, they think that was racist, they think that was sexist. I need to find the they. I want to understand them. I want you to share it with me and make me understand why we need to get rid of everything from the past that, for some reason, not everybody, a small percentage of people find offensive today. Why do we need to get rid of it? Let me know. If you're part of the they, please help me out here. All right, let me go to Dave, because he'll get annoyed if I don't come to him very quickly. Dave, hi, how are you?
Took you long enough.
Dave, you're not one of the they, so you know what I mean?
Huh?
You're not one of the they people.
No. Oh, can I just go back to something you said a while ago? You were talking about it, that library that was renamed.
Oh, Berkeley. Yeah, named after George Berkeley, yeah.
Yeah, so you said he hired some slaves.
Well, when I say, yeah, he paid. Well, oh, yeah, I know what you mean. Yeah, I know. Yeah, I understand what you mean by that, Jay. Nobody paid slaves. I get that.
There you go. No, just wanted to clear that up. Honestly, I think this whole they thing, I genuinely think it's like a 21st century internet phenomenon, because everybody says they won't let you say this, they won't let you say that, but you never encounter they in the real world. And when you do encounter someone like that, say in a group of friends who's like, "Oh, I'm offended by X, Y, and Z," everybody else swiftly tells them to shut the fuck up and lighten up, and live in the real world. The problem is, unfortunately, due to social media, those people have now been given the ability to network with each other, and they are fucking rabid when they go after something.
So so what they do is they go after the sponsors of the show. They go after boycotting people. They do all sorts of things. Yeah.
The last two Star Wars films were dog shit, and that was mostly because of rabid fans. I mean, an Asian actress on it was featured very little in the last two movies and had to shut down all of her social medias because racist, rabid Star Wars fans drove her to the point where they were making death and rape threats against her.
Oh my!
So you have this stuff online, and then I think now companies are just scared shitless of losing sponsorships. They're beginning to self-censor themselves to a point of absolute ridiculousness. Like you mentioned, like French Prince of Bel-Air. There's nothing offensive about Fresh Prince of Bel-Air.
No, but the BBC are now placing warnings on it that it's may have inappropriate content. The royal family, you know what I mean? And they're editing now, and they're actually cancelling Little Britain, editing Faulty Towers, Blackadder, which I've never watched, so I don't know how that's inappropriate.
Blackadder is one of the best comedies ever made. Like,
so describe to me what's inappropriate about Blackadder.
I was thinking about this myself. I mean, the first one was kind of like done based around like Macbeth. The second one
was there debauchery in it or something? You know what I mean?
No, but not really. Like the humor in it was really funny. I mean, there was a lot of fucking the piss out of the French, and maybe Blackadder Goes Forth was done, was set during World War II, World War One, in the trenches. So maybe there's something there. I don't know. Rowan Atkinson is probably one of the least offensive comedians on the face of the planet, for God's sake. So I can't understand. But we also kind of have to add a bit of context to all this as well. Like, those shows still exist. You can still buy them on DVD, and you can still find them online.
Yeah, but here's the thing. Yeah, but if you go out tomorrow and buy, the remastered version of Blu-ray Back to the Future 2, you're going to have the edited version. Now, don't get me wrong.
But you won't though, because my brother has a Blu-ray of Back to the Future, and we watched it, and it quite clearly said Libyan terrorists. Now, maybe after a certain year they might do that, but they can't.
But here's the thing: but why edit the doc saying it's the Libyan terrorists? I mean, it's not like we all assume that every Libyan is a terrorist, because that's not the case. So I mean, and I assume there are some Libyan terrorists somewhere in the world.
To be fair, after 9/11, it was more the Western media that did a better job of convincing everybody brown people were terrorists than anything else.
Yeah,
if you want to be serious about it for a second. But I honestly don't know. Look, the pendulum is swinging, back this way. I mean, how has nobody mentioned Blazing Saddles? Or Rocky Horror Picture Show? Rocky Horror Picture Show was made in the 70s.
Yeah.
In the time when movies like what's it called, The Life of Brian were banned in Ireland. So like I understand there is this censorship, but we also have come a long way as well in regards to what you can see on TV. I mean, once upon a time, you'd never hear somebody say fuck on television. Now we have shows like Game of Thrones on primetime TV, and Roald Dahl's books are all still there. It's just, look, I don't agree with newer versions. They're taking out words like fat and ugly. That's just, it sounds ridiculous to me. But at the same time, it's not like somebody's going around and getting all this, old material. And
but why change anything, even if it has words like fat and ugly and words that we generally don't use anymore? But why? I mean, that's historical content. That was the way that's like me wanting to change your birth cert. Do you understand what I'm saying? It's something that happened that can't be changed and shouldn't be changed. So why change things?
No, I don't know. I can't answer that question for you, because
take it for what it is. You know what I mean?
Money. Do you know? No, it's money. Well, what it is money. A lot of these media corporations, they couldn't give a shit what they put out, so long as they make money. And they're afraid of their life because of rabid fans or just people with too much fucking time on their hands on social media causing a storm. I don't really think there's much of this like social shift where everybody suddenly is all woke and offended by stuff. I really don't, because some of the most, popular comedians out there are ones who make, maybe racist jokes or, jokes about people with cancer or whatever.
I mean, do you remember, one of the funniest Irish ones we ever had was Dave McSavage, the Savage Eye. Remember this? I don't know. I mean, and he did this thing with, the bull Mick McCabe behind the bar. And he was like, the queers come into the bar. And he says, don't let them look you in the eye or they'll get you. And I know lads who are gay who thought that was hilarious, because the whole point of it was he was this dirty old barman that was bigoted and homophobic and hadn't got a clue. Wasn't that the whole point of it? Do you know what I mean?
No, but that's it. But so the reason stuff like that is popular is because we all know a guy like the Bull, but at the same time, he's not shown to be a serious character. He's a caricature, and everybody knows what he says and does is wrong. But we are laughing at him because we know it's a joke.
That'll be next. You wait and see. That'll be next. That'll be gone.
What do you mean that'll be next? It's not like, Jesus Christ, man. Calm down, chicken little. The sky isn't really falling down, okay? You can still find this stuff, okay? This stuff is still out there. We have, you know what? There's probably more access to stuff that people seem to be offensive now than there ever has been with YouTube, TikTok, the internet, DVDs, streaming services online that don't censor their stuff. I mean, you have to remember, there was my parents had a copy of The Life of Brian on VHS years ago, right? And it was like they were drug dealers. Every now and again, there'd be a knock on the door and be like, well, Jimmy, what's crack? Sorry, I changed to go borrow that video off you. Yeah, thanks. And it kept getting passed around because it was this video that nobody was supposed to have and it was all taboo. We have come a long, long, long way since then.
Okay, well, do me a favour. Stay there, Dave, because I want to come to Billy, but I want to go to Danielle first because we've been waiting ages. Sorry, Billy. Hang on. Danielle, hi, how are you?
I'm good, Niall. How's my favourite broadcaster?
I am perfectly fine, thank you very much. But I was going to say, Pat's great. So what was I going to say? Danielle, are you part of the they group?
No, I laugh at everything because I think things are funny.
Yeah. Well, so do I. I laugh at everything, and I see satire and comedy for what it is, just comedy.
Exactly.
But
it's not aimed at anybody in particular. It's just comedy. People need to grow up and stop getting offended.
Yeah, and what about the other aspect of it? I mentioned earlier on, George Berkeley and the Berkeley Library in Trinity, which they renamed last week because students, probably purple-haired ones,
of course it is,
wanted it renamed because of, what George Berkeley stood for, they believe, back in whatever it was, 1685.
That's the way things were back then. It's historical fact. It happened. Why change it? Why deny it's there?
Mm-hmm. Because they don't want that to be representative of Trinity's library anymore because obviously we live in a more diverse society.
Oh, absolutely. That's fine. But it's been named back for probably donkey's years. Mm-hmm. Why change it?
Yeah.
Just because he's associated with slavery. That's the way it was back then.
Well, he was associated with a lot of things, can I point out, by the way.
Okay.
Yeah.
Right, sorry, I didn't know that.
Oh, no, I'm just saying. I mean, he was an extremely intelligent man. He was, into literature. He was a very clever guy. In and around the time of Darwin's theory of evolution, if I remember rightly. I'm sure Billy will help me out in that in a few minutes because he's an expert when it comes to history. But in saying that just happened to be one aspect. But most historical characters of the time who would have been reasonably wealthy or did particularly well probably had a plantation in New England, I believe. Sure, American presidents had plantations before the abolition of slavery. I mean, don't get me wrong. By today's standards, of course it was wrong. But in those days, that was kind of the way life was, I suppose.
Exactly, and it was normal to the people who lived back then as well. They wouldn't have thought the way we thought, what some people think.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay, but getting back to the BBC.
It was wrong.
I mean, I don't know what Brendan O'Carroll said, what sparked this conversation tonight, by the way. I'm dying to know what he actually said.
So am I. Can't find anything.
Yeah, I've looked everywhere. So he said he made a clumsy joke where a racial term was implied. And he's apologised for it. He said he made the joke in the character of Mrs. Brown during rehearsal, and seemingly the staff, the cast or the crew, were shocked. I don't believe that actually. I believe one person may have been shocked and ran and
probably
snitched on him.
It was well, if he was in character, there was probably context here. I'd need to know what he said.
But it was close. He did apologise, and he said now he's only apologising because people are giving out, I suppose. But I mean, I've met Brendan a few times. He's such an inoffensive person. You know what I mean?
That says it all, doesn't it? He probably just said it and didn't realise he said it. Have you ever done that? Said something and you don't realise?
Oh yeah, all the time.
I reckon that's
all the time. I've used the F word twice on the radio in the last 10 years, by the way, by accident.
I love it when you curse, Niall.
I do it on the podcast, but I don't do it on the radio. Yeah, but I've done it twice on the radio by accident. Mm-hmm.
That's different.
Yeah.
I reckon he said it when he was in character and it's been taken out of context, more than likely.
Okay.
Because
do you find anything offensive, Danielle?
Not really, no.
No.
I'm pretty easygoing.
Yeah. But hang on, let me go to Billy as well. Billy, hi, how are you?
Fine, how are you keeping?
Good, I'm good, Billy. Billy, I suppose, let me just, because I know you have a degree in history, so let me just go to George Berkeley first if I can. They renamed, obviously, the library during the week. I'm not too sure, actually, who they renamed it after, some female historian or character.
I heard that they were doing that, Niall, but in fairness to Trinity College over the last 18 months, some of the bullshit that's being pulled by students in Trinity College leaves a lot to be desired. So no surprise they'll rename this. Look, I make a few points if I may. So firstly, when are the Americans going to rename Washington D.C.?
Yeah, of course. Yeah.
George Washington was a huge slave owner. Also a founding father of the U.S., but a massive slave owner. If you go through the documents of the Proclamation of Independence in the U.S., a lot of the signatories of that document were slave owners. They're revered in the U.S.
Well, I mean, correct me if I'm wrong, but George Berkeley was in and around the end of the 1600s. So at that particular time, most historical characters of note probably were reasonably wealthy, would have had plantations.
Most aristocracy would have had some sort of indentured service for slaves. Yes.
Yeah.
And it was quite common in the Americas, in the UK, in France. And the great thing that we forget about slavery is that a lot of people that were taken to the west coast of Africa and shipped as slaves and sold to Europeans and Americans were enslaved by African tribes in Central Africa and brought across. Mm-hmm. So this is something that's conveniently forgotten. But I just, as I said, I question when the Americans are going to rename Washington D.C. to something less offensive.
But I mean, but George Berkeley was famous for a lot more than, well, he wasn't famous for that, to be honest with you, until Trinity College made it a big deal. He was famous for so much more and that's why obviously the library is named after him, you know. Okay, but getting back to comedy, by the way, if I can, just for a moment. I mean, we're now talking, well, the BBC are talking about, cancelling certain, programs like the likes of Little Britain because it would have had blackface in it, maybe. Blackadder, Faulty Towers and all these type of things.
On the cancellation, Niall, I'm actually shocked that Mrs. Brown's Boys is still being made. I thought they gave up on that a couple of years ago. Little Britain, I don't think they're still making that either.
No.
I'll agree with Dave. I think Blackadder is one of the greatest comedies that's ever been put together. I don't know. Mm-hmm. I don't know any. I can't. I was thinking like what in Blackadder is possibly offensive, and Dave will know that Lord Flashhard, and like it's the only thing I can think of that's a little bit maybe a little bit offensive, but like in general, no, I can't think of anything that's really, in your face offensive that any particular group could be offended by. Dave said maybe the French, but like, coming from a historical point of view on this, things happen and interpretations over time change. So people will go back and they will put a different lens on a period of history or someone in history. They'll find another source document and they'll apply that and they will change the opinion on people. That happens the whole time. But like sweeping away what has happened is wrong. If we sweep away history where we don't learn anything from it. So you remember Looney Tunes, obviously.
I do, yeah.
A couple of years ago when they released the box set of Looney Tunes, they got Whoopi Goldberg to do a voiceover on the re-released and remastered Looney Tunes to make reference to some of the things that were very overtly racist in the Looney Tunes from the 1930s, 1940s.
What was racist about Looney Tunes?
Well, the Black Crows were...
Oh, Jim Crow.
There was minstrels, there was other things that were embedded
but they were of its time, weren't they? You know what I mean?
But that is exactly what Whoopi Goldberg said.
And then they did the same to Tom and Jerry, because we only ever saw the maid's legs. We never saw her. We only ever saw her legs, right? When she'd be running after the cat Tom. But they got rid of her out of it. That they've all been cancelled because the idea was that we stereotyped black people as being the servants or the maid. But that's not the way kids look at that. You know what I mean?
But Niall, with regards to the Looney Tunes one, I think the way they handled that was very well handled, because they went back and said, look, this had racist undertones at the time. It wasn't right then and it's not right now. But to hide it away would be to deny that it ever happened.
Yeah.
And that would be even worse than the racism that was there.
Right, okay.
So that's the way that they dealt with it.
Okay, but what about Faulty Towers? The idea that they're editing the Major's lines in Faulty Towers. Now, the Major, of course, on numerous occasions used racist terms because he was a bigoted, crazy, racist old man.
He was
the old grandfather in the Towers, and don't mention the war. Like, come on, there was plenty of material there. But again, Fawlty Towers is something of its time. As you said, one of the greatest comedies. It's very hard to see how they can edit that out and keep the context of what it is. One more point Niall, to make is streaming services. We're all paying for streaming services now, and not a lot of people are going to have digital or physical media in the future. And when you pay for Disney Plus, who own the rights to Back to the Future, they can edit that out at any time that they wish in the future. Yeah. Unless you have a physical copy, they can change it. They can change it any way that they see fit. So, it's a case of, in the future, you might go back and... Have you heard the term the Mandela effect?
Yes.
So people seeing changes of things that they would have recognized when they were kids. It may just be a case that it's on streaming media now, and the companies that own it have edited it because they feel they need to edit it to take things out.
Now, here, by the way, in relation to the Mandela effect, Dave, you're an expert in all this kind of stuff as well, right? So one of the things of the Mandela effect was Jaws in James Bond, when he met his future wife at the end of one of the Bond movies. When she smiled, she had braces. And I don't know if anybody's heard this story, but it turned out she didn't. This was a story that went around that it was a Mandela effect. Now, I only heard the other day that actually she did have braces, and people are saying it's not really a Mandela effect. Does anybody know that story, no?
I've heard that one.
His braces.
Does she have does she have braces? Because they're saying that she doesn't, because that's the Mandela effect.
I wouldn't know about the Jaws one, but like the one from...
Go ahead, Dave.
The one for me would be the Monopoly guy having a monocle. I always remembered him having the monocle.
He did have a monocle, didn't he?
No, apparently he doesn't.
Oh, right, okay. Okay.
So with the Jaws one, Niall, what happened is he fell from a, I think it was a ski lift or something like that, fell to the ground. She smiled at him, and he smiled with his big metal jaws, and they went off happily ever after.
Oh. Yeah, but everybody remembers her having braces. Seemingly she didn't.
Yeah, she had. I remember her having braces.
well, look it up. Seemingly she didn't.
I don't know why they'd edit that out, but anyway.
Yeah, well, no, I don't think they edited it out. I think that's the Mandela effect. I just mentioned the Mandela effect. Stay there, Billy and Dave. Let me go to Oisin. Oisin, hi, how are you?
Niall, I am they. I have suddenly decided that anybody of our vintage, to a certain extent, born during the 70s, can no longer laugh, have fun, or enjoy anything.
Good.
Of any nature.
So you're they.
Yes, I am they. I've decided that everything is offensive.
Okay.
And if you don't get the satire and you don't understand the actual concept of it, therefore, we're all the wrong. So cancel everything.
Yeah, just cancel a lot.
Cancel all of it. All of it. Because everything that we watch, like, remember the 18? They were killing people left, right and centre.
But there was never a drop of blood shed?
Exactly.
Yeah.
And B.A. Baracus could make a tank out of a washing machine. So, like...
Oh, what about Benny Hill? The idea that a comedy show would end with a half-naked woman running around with 20 men chasing her, that just wouldn't happen now. But
it wouldn't, in fairness. It was always sped up. And they're always wearing like corsets.
She was usually in a swimsuit or underwear or something like that. Yeah.
Or if you take it back to like, Carry On Laughing.
Oh, the Carry On movies. I forgot all about the Carry On movies. They were so inappropriate. Yeah.
Yeah. I must increase my bust.
Yeah.
And that was, I can't remember her name.
Barbara Windsor. Barbara Windsor.
That's the one. Thank you very much.
Who was famous for her bust, by the way, can I just point out?
Exactly. Yeah, 100% she was. And now people are just getting way too offended. I'm not being blasé, but I mean, there's so much stuff out there. What's next? Indiana Jones. That's going to be edited. Or Star Wars. Because it was an offence to a Wookiee. You know what I mean? Like, it's ridiculous. People are just taking too much offence. Literally, I can understand the situations.
Can you?
But people are...
Which ones can you understand? I don't. Maybe it's just me, and I'm kind of, I don't know, immune to all this stuff. I just don't get offended. I don't understand anything. Like, I was only talking to AJ about this earlier on, and I've only ever turned off or walked out of a movie, and that was Hostel many years ago. I just thought it was too much. I can't watch that. Anyway, I just found it too much. But generally speaking, I don't get offended by anything. It just doesn't bother me. It washes over me. Nothing offends me.
Can I be honest? Either do I. I just watch what I'm watching. And you make your own opinion.
Well, if you don't like it, turn it off.
Yeah, this is the whole point. You know, there is an off switch, and you just go, nope, don't like that, boom.
Yeah, we've so many choices now. You know, just watch something else.
Exactly.
Dave, have you ever, Dave, been offended by anything?
No, I generally don't get offended. Now, like, see, it depends. The way I see it, like, say, we'll take comedy, for example, right? Like, Dave, you can make a joke that has racist undertones, or you can make a joke where the butt of the joke is, like, maybe disabled people or people with cancer or whatever. But, like, you know it's just a joke, and the way, like, it's the way in which the joke is told. Like, if the joke is told because I'm saying this outrageous thing just for laughs, I don't really mean it, that's fine. But I have heard some comedians before make jokes that were just mean. I wouldn't say I was offended by him, but it was just like, you know what, you're a dickhead for making that joke. Because you're not trying to make, like, the reason we laugh at, say, cancer, for example, is to show that it doesn't have any power over us. You know, to show that it's this horrible, horrendous thing, but we're going to laugh at it because it doesn't, you know, like, it doesn't hold us in its grips, so to speak, if you've been affected by it. You know, and if the joke is funny, that's fine. But I have heard jokes before which were just, they were meant to be offensive for the sake of just being offensive, you know, just to piss another person off. That, like, I wouldn't get offended by that, but I would look at a person like that and go, you're just a fucking dickhead.
I think Jimmy Carr is probably the best comedian at telling the most offensive jokes and getting away with it.
No, Billy Connolly. If it wasn't for Billy Connolly, Jimmy Carr wouldn't exist.
Oh, probably, yeah. Billy Connolly is genius as well. Let me go to Sarah just finally. I've got 2 minutes. Sarah, hi. 1 minute, actually. 1.5.
How's it going, Niall? I'm disgusted you're having this conversation. What's the world becoming at all?
Yes, you're offended, are you?
Like,
you're
you can't
offended.
have a bit of crack without you being, you know what I mean? They'll be charging tax on it now for us breeding. Seriously, you know what? I don't know what. I'll be honest with you, I don't know. I think that's it. Comedy is gone. If you start that crack.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Pulling people over X, Y, and Z. Like, we know what the crack is about Mrs. Brown. There was one done in black and there was one done in white. You know what I mean? And there was controversy over that one as well.
Well, no, don't tell me. I know. I've never watched Mrs. Brown because it just doesn't appeal to me.
Well, I did like it, and I did like it when Rory was in it because I used to get a gas crack out of him.
Yeah.
But after he left, that was it. I was gone with it.
See, I just never found. I mean, don't get me wrong, Brendan O'Carroll, well done to him, and I'm so delighted that he's been so successful because I remember Brendan when he was trying really hard and wasn't successful. So I'm delighted for his success, and I really admire his success. But Mrs. Brown's Boys just doesn't do it for me. I don't find it funny. I'm not into that type of humour. But so I don't know what the appeal is, but I'm sure obviously people like it because it's the most popular show on Christmas Day.
Yeah, well, I think certain parts of the show is really funny. But then, like, if you to read too much into it, you can easily say certain things. But I'm not going to say that because I don't want to be sued on the airwaves.
I'd rather you didn't get me sued. Anyway, but that's only how the conversation started because seemingly Brendan O'Carroll said something that was had a racial term implied.
One day, but you have Catherine Tate, and she did a great. I love her.
She's so funny.
And she did The Interpreter.
Oh, that was hilariously funny. Yeah, where she did all these funny foreign accents. Yeah.
I was near crying for 3 days.
Oh, that's cancelled now. I'd say that's well cancelled.
I know, but I was laughing for 3 days myself. More people were looking, thinking I was weird.
Sarah, unfortunately, I've run out of time, Mushy, and I do apologise too. And thank you, Billy and Dave. Sarah, I do apologise for cutting you short.
Now, real people, real opinions. Nighttime Talk with Niall Boylan.
Ireland's classic hits radio.